Hello and welcome to, of course, episode number 9 of the Nasty Metal Podcast. Today, as far as the topics, we definitely, there is definitely some topics for sure. And of course, after a short break, the Q&A segment has returned thanks to somebody, and that will definitely be at least towards the end of the podcast. But in the middle, there's obviously, you should guess, there's definitely going to be some sad topics for sure. But before I get into any of that middle of of this, which is basically again the sad topics, let's definitely kind of run through at least a little bit of the schedule. I mean, I'm not going to name out every single Metal-tober at least, or what's left of the Metal-tober videos, though there is at least one I will at least let you know. Actually, of two. I will. That is, of course, it will be at least this coming Saturday, which, of course, is going to be kind of similar to my, when I was trying to put together the 5 spooky, rock and metal songs. I was also then kind of come up with stuff that was also songs that are based off of folklore, and at times as also real events, real horror events. And that will be at least, I picked about 4 titles, and that video is at least going to be out Saturday. As for next week, I'm all, since if you did took the time to watch the what was it, the 5, was it, I think like it was the top 5 music or rock and metal music videos featuring horror icons characters. Well, there's going to be a follow-up to that kind of video. I'm actually going to try and put together at least, see if I can find at least, I know that there's 3 in mind, but there's probably going to at least be 5 music videos that were at least to promote horror films. So that will be at least next week. Don't know when for next week, but that's going to be one of next week's Metal-tober videos. So there, I have unveiled some 2 of at least of the upcoming Metal-tober videos for this month, at least for the rest of this month. I know that there's still a few more, and the one I have still will yet to unveil, the one that will be out on October 31st. That one, of course, will be, well, again, you're going to have to at least find out on Halloween, be what that video is. Again, it at least is going to be me narrating one of my absolute favorite concept albums, at least the plot for one of my favorite metal concept albums. There was at least one person that was very hot when it came to at least guessing the video, but still, all of you have to find out on October 31st, being Halloween. Alright, so as far as the scheduled content, tomorrow of course will be uploading or will be posting my review for, of course, the newest, in many ways also a comeback album for, of course, Blurs the Cult, that is The Symbol Remains. That review will be, of course, up tomorrow. Again, as far as Sunday, it's up in the air what will be up on Sunday. Surprisingly, this would have been up Sunday, but it's being here on Thursday, so I think it just made it interesting since I wanted to kind of get this particular podcast out of the way. And towards the end, I'll definitely unveil a second podcast episode, which will be out towards the end of this month, but I'll give you the details on what that is going to end up being. But that's going to be a special podcast episode. So as far as the what's going to be of that episode, as far as details, again, that will be towards the end of this podcast. All right, so and then for Monday, well, the Album of the Week episode is right now, it's up in the air what that's going to be, but it's definitely going to be an album that I definitely enjoy quite a bit, and it's perfect for this kind of month. So that there will be an Album of the Week episode for at least Monday, but it's right now up in the air on what that album is going to be, so I'm not going to give out any details on what that album is going to be, even though it's not really anything special. But right now, I'm just definitely coming up with it, because again, this podcast is definitely more a spur of the moment than anything. So everything is not yet been set in stone. So I'll definitely tell you that. Tuesday, for at least Tuesday again, it's up in the air what Metaltober video is going to be. It could be the one for at least the top 5 rock and metal music videos that were to promote horror films. It could be. It could be. But it's up in the air what it's going to be. Wednesday will, of course, be a review for the newest Virus album. That will definitely be Wednesday's review. Again, for Thursday, it's up in the air of what the Metaltober video is going to be, but it will be one for sure. And for Friday is going to be, let me go into my stack here real quick. Let's see what we got here. All right. So for Friday's album review is going to be, I believe it is the band's debut album, but it's Kings of Beyond from Hellgun. That is of course, going to be Friday's album review. And again, Saturday is another Metaltober video, and Sunday is probably it will be, of course, well, I'll give out details on that soon on when it comes to at least, for at least at the end of the video here, or at least at the end of the podcast here. So there. So I don't want to give out too many details. I'm not going to give out too much. You know what? Fuck it. I'm going to give out the final week of October. What's going to be that week's content schedule? I know for sure that the album of the week for that Monday of the final week of October is going to be a album of the week spotlight on Power from Hell from Onslaught, which I'm surprised I didn't showcase as an album of the week episode. I'm surprised I didn't, but it hasn't, so therefore it's free. It's free to be at least be showcased as an album of the week. So there's going to be, that will be Monday's album of the week. And for Wednesday's album review, will be for Celebration Day from Vicious Rumors. And then, of course, for that Friday review, the final Friday of October will be, of course, the newest album from Hex. That says Entangled in Sin. So there you go. There is at least these weeks' scheduled content. Alright, so there you go. Without that, let's finally just get into the other topics. Let's get into the sad topics. Let's definitely mourn for a little bit. And before I get to at least the big one, let's definitely run through at least some smaller ones. Of course, on the day that I had recorded my Album of the Week episode for Blizzard of Oz, it was on that day that it ended up coming out that, or at least before that day. Actually, it was before that day. Was it after? Yeah, it was actually before that day. Or it was on that day, actually. It was on that day that, well, it came out that it was at least reported that Lee Kerslake had passed away. And the thing is, I'm not going to too much, or at least comment anymore on his death, because if I already did on that, on my on that Album of the Week spotlight for Blizzard of Oz. So I don't have to talk too much, but it was just really surprising that by the time I was beginning to, it then was reported. So it was something that, again, it was and the thing is, I already had done that month's podcast anyways, and then when it came out, it was like, fuck. It was definitely a bit, it was sad. I mean, I'd figured it was coming. It was coming anyways, given all the reports over the years, all the health, the scares, and so on. And, well, everything caught up. It sadly caught up, and it did. So it was definitely sad, and so I don't have to talk too much. I already kind of talked a bit of it about his sad passing on my Album of the Week spotlight on, for sure, of Blizzard of Oz. But another one, as far as when it comes to at least the wrestling part, when it comes to at least deaths, this was shocking to me. This was absolutely shocking to me. But I mean, just prior to the day it was reported that the legendary Road Warrior Animal, before his passing, he had, of course, gave his thoughts on that week's WWE Raw episode, and he had some thoughts for sure. And again, it was all reported, and again, it was on the whole retribution angle, which I'm not going to talk into. I'm not going to go into that fucking fiasco. Still, though, he gave his thoughts. He obviously had some negatives about it, for sure. And again, it was reported. And then the following day, well, he's dead. He's now reporting that he had died. And it was like, what the fuck? Apparently, it's now been reported since then that he was obviously having some health problems, which is really kind of sad, because Animal was at least was the last of the surviving Road Warriors. He was the last of the surviving ones. Again, Hawk had passed away at least back in 2003, and I do want to kind of point this out. It was at least great that Animal was still alive to at least participate in, of course, the Dark Side of the Ring episode on the Road Warriors. Again, I should definitely plug this. If you are a wrestling fan, I do recommend checking out Dark Side of the Ring, even if some of you may have your opinions on Viceland, or at least on Vice, on the Vice company. If I know some of you may have thoughts on them, but the Dark Side of the Ring stuff it's so put together. And as far as the topics and the detailings and so on, it's so well made. They go in some good length. They definitely go in some good backstory and all of that. And it's so well constructed. And the Road Warriors episode was a great watch. And it was great to at least have Animal alive, to at least he was able to at least participate, along with, of course, Paul Ellering, the manager for, of course, the Road Warriors. And of course, the Road Warriors were one of my absolute favorite tag teams of all time. I just loved every bit of them. Of course, I failed to mention in my spotlighting for Paranoid from Black Sabbath. I meant to, I forgot to mention that the song Iron Man, besides I think being also kind of used as the theme song for at least the film, the Marvel film Iron Man, it was for a while the theme song, or at least the entrance theme music for the Road Warriors in the 80s, especially in their time in the NWA. That was their tag team entrance music, and it was just, and it worked. It fit them. It definitely gave them that mystique. It just made, every time again you heard that track from Black Sabbath and them coming out, you knew shit was gonna happen, and they were fucking badass. So it was just, it's just quite sad that that the day had to come for at least Animal to pass away. Definitely, it sucked. Again, it sucked. But again, that's life for you. Definitely one of my favorite tag team wrestlers of all time. Both him and Hawk were one of my favorite tag team wrestlers. So it definitely sucked on all that level. Think of other things that seem to definitely suck in terms of 2020. It's finally, let's get into the big one. I think many people are definitely want to get my thoughts on this, I bet. But it wasn't that shocking to me. It's shocking that at least it came earlier, but it's shocking in its own right for at least the world that, of course, Eddie Van Halen. You know, say what you want. I will just come out and say I was more of a casual fan, at least, of Van Halen. I was more of a casual Van Halen fan than an absolute Van Halen fan. I'm not going to deny that that guy was at least seen as an influence and a bit of a inspiration to at least that sort of decade when it came to at least guitar playing. He definitely, there's no doubt that Van Halen definitely changed at least the outlook of or at least to change the landscape, at least of the hard rock and metal movement for sure in there. I mean, good Lord. Almost every band, especially if you listen to a lot of the glam bands and so on, you really could hear the influence from Van Halen. Even the stage look and so on, it was at least what was at least inspired by that. I mean, if you listen to some of George Lynch's work and some of those Dokken albums, you can hear how much of a inspiration, at least how much Eddie Van Halen at least kind of changed that, even though it's very debatable on that because of as far as it's been known. Then again, I think it is because of Van Halen were playing the pubs and the club and the strip clubs and so on in LA for pretty much the better half of the early to mid 70s basically. So in many ways, for anyone that was growing up and going to those places, I think everybody was pretty much inspired at least or influenced by Eddie Van Halen. I think George Lynch was for sure in some ways was influenced. The reason I say it's debatable because of his first band, which was titled Exciter, which has nothing to do with the Canadian band. I think their very first recording was 1977, and even though the playing is very similar, they were seen similar. It's just that by the time I think everybody at least heard George Lynch's work was after the time Van Halen had broke the mainstream charts. They were becoming the biggest stars on the earth. So at that point, I think it's kind of, I mean, there's probably not denying, I think it did I think Eddie Van Halen definitely did influence George Lynch's work, and the same goes again for every single other, at least, guitar player in, of course, a part of those, the hair metal or glam metal, whatever the fuck you want to refer that shit as. He definitely was an influence, for sure. His guitar playing definitely changed some of that. I mean, even listening at times to Randy Rhoads, who in many ways was more of the next step up, I would say, from Eddie Van Halen. He was the next step in that evolution of rather flashy guitar playing, and really in terms of also really turning up the gain on the guitar amps and really cranking out that kind of stuff. And I mean, listen to at least the track Eruption, which was one of the earliest parts of really kind of mixing a little bit the neoclassical styling into, of course, the guitar playing. I mean, not on the, it was not on an extent of like Richie Blackmore, at times even Uli John Roth, or at times even Yngwie Malmsteen, but it was close because of, again, the Eruption track on its own merits definitely helped start up the second boom, that second really guitar boom of the 1980s. I mean, listen to even a couple of the guitar players that were on Shrapnel Records. You're going to hear also the influence from, of course, Eddie Van Halen, so definitely he left his mark on there. As far as me, again, I was more of a casual fan of Van Halen than a diehard fan. I mean, again, I enjoyed the stuff with the David Lee Roth era the most. Probably because, again, as far as really looking for that raw quality, I think it definitely was more showcased more in the David Lee Roth era than any of the eras after it. I mean, besides a couple of songs from the Van Hagar era, I'm just not a fan of that era to begin with. I think, again, even though Eddie Van Halen has said in many interviews that they had gotten better, that's probably was just him spouting his moods because he probably definitely wanted to he didn't want to have anything else to do with David Lee Roth. He obviously just wanted to take more shots at David Lee Roth, and they all did. I mean, look at the album OU812. That was more of an inside joke on David Lee Roth. They obviously, the title itself pretty much, again, it was them poking fun at David Lee Roth's Eat 'Em and Smile. So that's why, hence, OU812. So, yeah. They always had a way of just playing on that. And, of course, even when it came to our album, for unlawful carnal knowledge. Probably fucked that title, but and if you were to spell the initials out, it basically said fuck. So they always had a way of just throwing in their humor, but you can tell they probably for sure were taking as much shots as they could at David Lee Roth, especially on the album title for OU812, because there's no other song on the album that's titled that, as far as I know. I've got it in my collection, but I barely listened to it. There's at least a few decent songs on there, but I'm just not a big fan of at least the Sammy Hagar era of Van Halen. I'm just not that big of a fan. I like Sammy Hagar. I like his stuff at Montrose, and I do like some of his solo albums, but the stuff he did with Van Halen, most of it just left me fucking cold. It just left me cold. I actually think the album he did with, was it the Circle? Sammy Hagar and the Circle? That album? I actually think that's a way better than any of the stuff he did with Van Halen. I actually think that album blows into that shit out of the water than anything any of the stuff that Sammy Hagar did with Van Halen. And again, no disrespect to at least Eddie Van Halen, but for the people, of course, ever since his passing, I've been seeing on social media, everyone is now at the point, or now pretty much are wiping out the memory, or wiping out the history of Sammy Hagar, and are now back at saying that Sammy Hagar is to blame for a lot of those albums. It's all him to blame. When I thought it was at least of common knowledge that Sammy Hagar had barely to do with a lot of the change with at least the band. I mean, go back to at least to 1984. Before then, whenever everyone picked their favorite Van Halen album, as far as when it came to the David Lee Roth era, only a handful of people that at least would pick 1984 as one of their favorites, but beyond that, many have said that 1984 was like the downward spiral for Van Halen to begin with, but now after that, oh geez, it's such a brilliant fucking record. Listen, I get it. It's understandable that that there were some that were definitely considered Eddie Van Halen one of their favorite guitar players. But I think there comes a point where I think there's a lot of blind, I would say blind worship, and thinking that everything it's there with Richie Blackmore. It's there with at times with for sure even. I can't say Yngwie, but it's almost there if you were to think about it. But for sure, it's there with Richie Blackmore at times. It's even there with Tony Iommi. It's there with at least with some of them. At times, it's even there with Randy Rhoads. It's blind worship is gonna be with every single guitar player, and at this point, it seems to be apparent with as well with Eddie Van Halen. They all think that anything he did before Sammy Hagar was absolutely amazing, which I like that stuff. But I think there's some people that when it came to that, they all say, oh, it's all Hagar's fault. He's the one that fucked the band. Oh, he's the one that fucked them out of doing a reunion. Give me a break. I'm about to get into a rant here on some of these stupid blind motherfuckers right now, because obviously, if you really think that Sammy Hagar really fucked the band out of doing a reunion, then you obviously are that blind to actually realize that Eddie Van Halen, hence the reason why before his death, why he was starting to make amends with Sammy Hagar, why he was starting to think making amends with Michael Anthony, why he was starting to make amends with even David Lee Roth and some of them, is because of he probably was self-aware that he probably wasn't going to live for much longer due to all the bad health scares and the reports from either Sammy and even Michael Anthony and even at times even David Lee Roth. They all, and think of his brother. I can't remember. I think his brother was also, might have been one. I know for sure they all were aware that he was not doing good in health. But if you, again, to go back to at least of that, no, Eddie Van Halen obviously burnt bridges. It's like with Richie Blackmore. If something that doesn't go their way, they're gonna fucking throw a bitch fit and would rather just kick the person out of the band. Look at the fucking in some cases, there I know somebody that is absolutely a fan, or at least somewhat appreciates the Van Halen 3 album. But if you look into at least the background of that album, you can't tell me that Eddie Van Halen had more to do with the change in direction, and him being more of the reason on why some of the reunions were not coming to place. You can't tell me that he's not one at least to take the blame for that. I mean, look, prior to at least, I remember in 2015, Sammy Hagar went on social media to basically trash Eddie Van Halen for talking so much shit about Michael Anthony. It should be common knowledge that Eddie Van Halen was a little bit of had an ego. But the thing is, prior to his death, at least before, he was starting to make amends with him. He kind of knew he was kind of acting like a little bit of a prima donna. Kind of like in some ways with a wrestler like Shawn Michaels, who was known for being a backstage prick. Just listen to Jim Cornette on some of those accounts. Still, though, again, just to see all that stuff on Facebook, and now everyone's saying, only Sammy Hagar's to blame, and why all the reunions didn't happen. Oh, fuck you. It's just total blind worship. I get it. You know, it sucks. Eddie Van Halen is dead. But I don't want to, at this point, I don't want people already taking this that I'm trying to bash Eddie Van Halen. I'm more so bashing the fans for not at least accepting the fact that, just like with every musician, they've got egos. This is probably going to be one of those brutally honest parts of my stuff. And again, I am brutally honest. I'm going to admit, it makes me sound like an asshole, but that's how I end up as sounding like an asshole is because everyone else wants to sound more stupider than me. It should have been common knowledge that he was a little bit of a pain in the ass in some aspects because of he wanted things to be done in the way he probably saw fit. That's why Sammy Hagar in his video response back in 2015 was saying that Eddie Van Halen was just telling Michael Anthony to do more simple based notes. So he would at least sound that Eddie Van Halen wasn't making mistakes. That he already pointed that out. So really, it should be at least of knowledge. As much as it sucks that he's dead, I mean, at this early, and with the cancer scares and that, you know, you would have thought that Eddie Van Halen would have been one to pull through. But the thing is, I'm wondering if he didn't get to at least find out until after it was starting to hit its worst stage. Because again, I think it's been kind of said if you were to catch the cancer at least at its early on, and at least in its first stage, you probably would have been able to beat it. But the thing is, it's probably sad to probably think that he might have caught it right when it was starting to get when it was getting worse. It went undetected and it got worse. So I'm wondering if that was the whole case. I mean, yeah, it sucks. But to go on social media and to now just say, oh, fuck you, Sammy Hagar, for stripping us away from the reunion of the original lineup. Every time I see that, I just want to slap every one of them in the face for that. I just want to slap them. Because I think it's absolutely childish to blame one person for at least blame Sammy and all of that when it wasn't his band. It wasn't his fucking band. It was Eddie Van Halen. He was one that had more at least to say so in what went on. Not a Sammy Hagar, who was just hired to at least try and get them to sell more fucking records and to be at least sell out more stadiums. Because obviously at that point, I think there was again the issues between David Lee Roth and Eddie Van Halen were become apparent. It's a similar situation between Ritchie Blackmore and Ian Gillan. Again. Just the clashing of different ideas and so on became an issue. So there. Like I said, to finally kind of end this, it sucks definitely rocking peace for sure to Eddie Van Halen. But for those that want to keep trying to play the blame game and not trying to acknowledge the fact that your favorite guitar hero had an ego problem, that's on you. That ain't on Sammy Hagar. That's on you. You fucking idiots. There we go. There's a little bit of a rant there. We got ourselves a rant in at least a bit of this podcast. Ugh. All right, let's definitely move on. Let's finally move on to something. Let's get to the Q&A. Let's get to the Q&A segment. Let's finally move this bitch along. All right, so I only got one answer in. Was sent into, of course, to my Gmail account, which again I will leave in my Gmail account again in the description box for you to at least use as a way to send in your answers. If for these Q&A segments on these podcasts, again, my Gmail my Gmail account there is going to be in, of course, the subscription box. So there. All right. So this was sent to me. Of course, it comes from Stormrider, who is a past person of sending in questions. So here we go. Let's get this in. Hi, Ben. First of all, I want to thank you for answering my questions in the last podcast, and secondly, for running your channel and doing some great work on there. Here are my questions. 1. How do you do your reviews? Do you, for instance, use a scoreboard? Or do you, for instance, rate each song individually and take the average of, do you use another method? Alright, I guess, average of another method. And of course, the second question is, in 2016, you did the USPM month, which I think was awesome. You did a top 15 EPs list and a top 30 full albums list. Since this is more than 4 years ago, looking at it now, do you still stand by these top lists? Or do you, in looking back at it now, would change something in the ranking, or perhaps even leave some albums out and put some new ones in, for instance? 3. Can you give your top 10 Swedish 80s metal albums? Thank you and take care and be safe, man. Alright. Whew. There's definitely some cool questions, and thank you for the feedback. I appreciate that a lot. I really appreciate that. Now, the answer, at least the first questionnaire. Let's definitely get into the first question on how do I do my reviews. Well, now I really don't use a scoreboard. I actually don't use a scoreboard, and I don't really rate each song. Again, I don't really rate my songs each individually. I don't. Instead, for the most part, I just listen to the album, and by the time after I felt I've given the album at least a decent enough listens, let's say be 3 times, sometimes maximum being 5 times, that's where I will base the score will be given at least by naturally on how I feel after listening to the album. And of course, when it comes to songs, again, mostly it's just me, my thoughts and so on them. I don't really rate each song, but sometimes I think the only time I did that, I actually, at least through Windows Media Player, I think I did that with, oh boy, let me go on my YouTube channel here. Right now I'm drawing a blank, but there is I know I did that with a certain particular album. I did that with Reignited from Torch. I did that with Reignited from Torch, actually. So that's the only time I ever did, at least, where I based off my score from rating each song on at least Windows Media Player, and that's where I came up with my own score. So that's where I kind of did that kind of similar thing there. That's where that similar tactic. But still, I don't really use a scoreboard all the time. I just go by what I come up with as far as scoring is. I guess I don't know if I can say that if that's really much of a scoreboard, but I just come up with my own score to begin with. Again, I got my own scoring system to begin with. I know many, again, when it comes to YouTube reviewers, they have their own scoreboard, or at least their own score method on how they, again, their rating system, they've got their own. So in many ways, I had to come up with my own different kind of score method, my own score rating method. Which is somewhat inspired by the score rating method on Forces of Steel, actually, the forum. It was actually somewhat inspired by that, because I used to do type reviews on the Forces of Steel forum. And of course, some of those apps I had reviewed on there have already been re-reviewed here on the channel anyways. So, it's very cool. So, that's definitely my answer to your first question. So, yes, I don't really go much by a actual scoreboard, and I don't really rate each song individually for the most part. It's just what I naturally feel. That's how it's always been, how I naturally feel. So that is to at least answer your first question. Now your second question is, of course, on the question about my top 15 lists and top 30 full album lists from when I did a USPM month back in 2016. And it's on the question on since, again, being 4 years later, is there anything I would change in those lists? Well, I actually found, before kind of doing this podcast, before turning it on, I went and I found my original lists. Because it's been that long, and my memory tends to be a little short at times. It's been that long, and I don't have some stuff I got really good photographic memory. But when it comes to stuff that's been that long, and for some reason it hasn't been that memorable, I don't have a good memory. Even though I had fun doing that list, I barely can remember, but I found the lists for those two videos. So let's to take a look at these. Let's definitely take a look. Alright, so the first one was on the EP list. It was on the EPs. So at number 15, when looking back, I had Only Time Will Tell from Villain. I had, at number 14, I had Give 'Em the Axe from Lizzie Borden. At number 13, I had the self-titled Ruffians EP. And at number 12, I had the self-titled Purgatory EP. And at number 11, I had the self-titled Dark Age EP. And at number 10, I had the self-titled Queensryche EP. At number 9, I had the Sign of 4 from Blacklist. And at number 8, I had Prepare to Die from San Antonio Slayer. And number 7, I had the self-titled Jack Panzer EP, which at times is also known as the Tyrants EP. And at number 6, I had the Dominatrix from Savage Grace. And number 5, I had Metal Without Mercy from Ruthless. At number 4, I had The Dungeons Are Calling from Sabotage. And at number 3, I had Cry in the Night from Banshee. And at number 2, I had the Mad Locust Rising EP from Agent Steel. And at number 1, well, I had the Martial Law EP from Obsession. Of course, this was before some of these albums I really didn't own. Some of them I do. When I did this list, I didn't actually have a physical copy of the Martial Law EP from Obsession. And now I do. And so, to answer that question about if there's anything in this list I would switch or get rid of, there really isn't. There's really nothing here I would change, to give you my honest answer. There's nothing on here I would change. Again, I would keep the Villain EP at number 15. I would keep the Lizzie Borden EP at number 14. Actually, you know what? There actually would be. I probably would have put, now when looking back, I probably would have put at least, would have moved the Lizzie Borden EP and the Ruffians EP a little further up. Same goes for even the Queensryche EP. I kind of moved that one a little upper as I now looking back at some of this now. Again, to at least rechange my mind. There's probably would have been a few things, but for the most part, there's really not much I can rechange. Not really much there, but so that would be there to answer that part of your that second question there. Now, on to what I would change or get rid of on my top 30 full album list for US Power Metal Month. Looking at this is one I would have some stuff change. I would, because here, to kind of run through this, at number 30, I had Know Your Enemy from Lost Rocket. At number 29, I had The Curse from Omen. At number 28, I had Soldiers of the Night from Vicious Rumors. At number 27, I had Annihilation Absolute from Cities. At number 26, I had Tied to the Tracks from Purgatory. At number 25, I had The Grip from Havoc. At number 24, I had the self-titled Fifth Angel album. At number 23, I had No Stranger to Danger from Lost Rocket. At number 22, I had the self-titled Vicious Rumor album, which would have been their third full-length album, which was self-titled. At number 21, I had Doomsday for the Deceiver from Flotsam and Jetsam. At number 20, I had Discipline of Steel from Ruthless. At number 19, I had Digital Dictator from Vicious Rumors. At number 18, I had Freedom's Rise from Liege Lord. At number 17, I had Under the Spell from Hex. At number 16, I had Nosferatu from Hellstar. At number 15, I had Refuge Denied from Sanctuary. At number 14, I had Burned to My Touch from Liege Lord. I had a little typical kind of saying that. Number 13, I had Ample Destruction from Jack Panzer. At number 12, I had... oh boy. I actually had the self-titled Metal Church album, and at number 11, I believe, was Raising Fear from Armored Saint. It might have been. It's been that long, actually. Funny enough, it's really been that long. At number 10, I had Methods of Madness from Obsession. At number 9, I, of course, had Metal from Hell from Satan's Host. Number 8, I had Thundersteel from Riot. At number 7, I had Ruler of the Wasteland from Chastain. At number 6, I had After the Fall from Grace from Savage Grace. At number 5, I had, I think it might have been Remnants of War from Hellstar, if I am correct. At number 4, I had The Awakening from Powerlord. At number 3, I believe might have been The Spectre Within from Fate's Warning. At number 2, I had, of course, Winterkill from Sonic Stories. And at number 1, it might have been Reign of Terror from Wild Dogs. So... at what I would change here. For one, I would have moved Know Your Enemy a little farther up, and I would have put probably No Stranger to Danger a little bit at the bottom. I would have done that. And I would have had the Ruthless album, Discipline of Steel, at number 30. I would have had that at number 30, and The Curse would have stayed at number 29. Same where I would keep Annihilation Absolute at the same spot. Same goes for at least Tied to the Tracks. The Grip stays where it's at. The self-titled Fifth Angel album kind of stays where it's at. Same goes for the self-titled Vicious Rumors album, which I probably would have put up a little further up, actually. Almost closer to at least maybe Digital Dictator. Maybe even a little, maybe even up further than the Vicious Rumors than Digital Dictator. Doomsday for the Deceiver would be at its same spot. Freedom Rise, I think, actually, you know what? No, I would have done. I would have had probably the Flotsam and Jetsam album at the spot where Freedom's Rise would have been. And I would have put that at the number 21 spot. Under the Spell would be a little further up from Nosferatu. It's been that long, and that's how I kind of feel, since that's on the album I really go for when I'm actually listening to Hex. It's actually the one, and I tend to really pass that one up more so than over Nosferatu from Hellstar. And as far as Hellstar, again, I'm fine with where Remnants of War is. Again, that is my go-to Hellstar album. Refuge Denied, I think, would have been where it's at. Liege Lord would have been a little behind, would have been at number 15, and Refuge Denied would have been at number 14. Ample Destruction, I would have kept where it's at. The Metal Church Am would have kept where it's at, or Raising Fear would have kept where it's at. And then, as far as the stuff in the top 10 spot, is where it stays where it's at. So it's most of the stuff within at the bottom there I would have changed up. But that's what I'm now looking back. That's all I would have changed. So there you go. That answers at least that whole question there. So yeah, there's at least stuff in that the 30 list that I would have changed. But as far as the EP list, like I said, there's really not much there. I really would have completely changed. Whatever I would change would be just a little minor touches. That's all about it. But there would been some drastic changes, at least in the 30 list. So there you go. It's been that long, and as looking back, yeah, it's how I'm feeling at this point. So thank you for bringing that up. There's Storm Rider. Thank you for bringing that one up. Now, the very last question, which is the third question of your questionnaire, the third one is, can you give your top 10 Swedish 80s metal albums? And that was a little difficult one. To answer that one, I just went and put together a list because of, if I had just did this on the fly, I would have took a little more longer to actually name you at least my 10 favorite Swedish metal albums. Or at least 80s metal albums. I would have taken a little longer. I would have drawn some fucking blanks. But so I was a little more professional, and I went and put a list together. So let's run off this list again. I wouldn't say it's not really in any particular order, but I did rate them in 10. At least list out 10 anyways. So really, but still, this is really not in any particular order. So really, from my first pick in that list. And would be, of course, the debut self-titled 1983 album from Torch, The Lord of Flies from Axe Switch, Power Gains from 220 Volt, Death or Glory from Heavy Load, the self-titled Europe album, the first Defiance from Agony, probably the only thrash metal album at least in this list, The Unknown from Gotham City, Swords and Axes from Overdrive, Turn on the Power from Mindless Sinner, and the self-titled Crystal Pride album. So there's your 10, there's my 10 favorite Swedish metal albums, or at least the ones I can give you, the ones I really enjoyed the most. So there you go. There's at least my answer to your to your question there of me, what would have been my 10 Swedish 80s metal albums. So there you go. There's pretty much the answer to your question. So I pretty much answered all your questions, and thank you for sending in that. That was very cool. Thank you of you. Again, for any of those who want to at least send in questions for me to at least answer on the Q&A segments of these podcast episodes, again, you can either leave your questions in the comments section, or you can find my Gmail link, account link in the description box, and you can send me an email of your question so I can answer them on these podcasts. So with that, thank you. So that now ends the Q&A segment of the podcast, and now finally, we're pretty much near the end of this podcast, which again, episode number 9. So, since I kind of hinted at earlier at the beginning of this podcast that there will be a second podcast episode and a special podcast episode at that will be out a little within at least 2 weeks here to kind of end out the month of October. What that is, it's titled 9.1 because it's definitely in some ways coincides with this one. So it's not really episode number 10, but it's going to be a special episode. It's going to be a special Halloween episode where I give you, again, I'll go down memory lane with you in my past when it comes to Halloween, talk about other topics of that, and stuff that my favorite Halloween moments, or at least some of my favorite moments from years when participating on the night of Halloween when it comes to trick-or-treating, of who I dressed up as one year, or actually 2 years where I dressed up as. I mean, I've dressed up as a couple of metal icons for sure, at least rock icons as Halloween. I've done that. And I'll definitely give you my, some of my experiences, some of my favorite memories on Halloween, for at least Halloween. And so with that, there you go. That will be out on in 2 Sundays from now. That will be out. So the Sunday of the final week of October. That will be October 25th. So there you go. There is episode number 9 of the Nasty Metal Podcast. I hope y'all enjoyed this one, and I'll see y'all later. Take care, everyone, and definitely send in your questions if you want them answered on of course, episode number 10 of the Nasty Metal Podcast. So with that, I hope y'all enjoyed. So without further ado, Heavy Thrasher Sam out, and I'll see you all later. Take care, everyone.